Morning. Yesterday, two issues cropped up. Actually, they are the two different sides of the same coin. The Congress, the new Congress, Republican dominated, was to meet yesterday, and that met. And to that message, Canadian Prime Minister sent a video message to that Congress, wishing them well. And in that greetings, he mentioned that US and Canada have a symbiotic relationship. And he talked of the economic integration. Immediately after the message was received, President-elect Trump made a new appointment, and that was of the trade representative to Canada, Robert Lighthizer. Immediately, along with the appointment of the new trade commissioner, the trade representative, came the statement by the press secretary to the president-elect, and he said that the president-elect has campaigned on the issue of protectionism as Canada, not for Canada, but for America. He was also equivocal in saying that America first is the major aim of president-elect. Now this runs counter to the wish of Prime Minister Trudeau when he called for economic integration. Basically, economic integration is always the first step towards political integration. See what happened in Europe. European Union started as European Economic Community, EEC, and then it evolved into EU. On the other side, when the political unions take place, they do not become economic unions because they are marriages of convenience. But economic integration is not a marriage of convenience. It is a definitive, unending relationship because you develop a symbiotic relationship, a blood relationship, where your economy and your health is dependent on the other. Maybe one part is supplying only the resources, the other is supplying only the technical know-how. And then the result is economic progress of both. Nothing wrong with that. That's as a matter of a welcome sign. But in case of political differences, the party which has got more clout, more power, can definitely screw the party which does not have sufficient clout to fight back. Now the new trade representative, Lighthizer, has a record of being pro-protectionist, has a record of being not very much favorably inclined to Canada. And the way the appointment was made and the way Mr. Spicer, press secretary to President-elect Trump, responded immediately after the video session shows that all is not right with the world, that something is wrong in the economic hope of Prime Minister Trudeau. Well, the message was definitely a goodwill message. Nothing wrong with that. But normally, when the parliaments meet, you don't send a message. Indian Parliament, Canadian Parliament, British Parliament, they meet as a matter of course. And sending this message, which goes against the spirit of the president-elect, was a mistimed move. It was in good intention, no denying about that. But it was not timed properly, And the wording was not, if it had just been, we welcome you, it would have been sufficient. But calling for economic integration was not the best phrase to use. Anyway, coming to what's going to be the impact of Trump presidency, especially in the light of appointment of Robert Lighthizer. There are major four issues. One is first, of course, the lumber issue, which has been hanging fire since long. And there is every indication that US is going to get out of that commitment. So lumber is a major, major problem. And the economy of British Columbia, New Brunswick, etc. is quite dependent on the way US buys lumber from Canada. Mr. Lighthizer is replacing the person who was pro-Canadian in approach, but now the approach shall be based on hard realities and may not be very conducive to the economic health of Canada. Then there are other factors. It's quite possible that President Trump may reactivate the regulations regarding beef and dairy. Till now, beef and dairy in Canada has been protected, and they have been exporting to US a lot. That was because certain regulations were not being implemented, regulations of USA. And in case President-elect Trump decides to reactivate them, and let's not forget, the Trade Secretary is in favor of reactivating them because he says that he wants to help Montana, Arizona, Utah economy, and that is possible only if you reactivate these regulations. Now that reactivation would mean that the Canadian beef and the Canadian dairy products would become much too expensive and they will not be able to compete despite all the subsidies given by the federal and the provincial governments. Secondly, it's quite possible that the US again might invoke World Trade Organization to ensure that the subsidies are not given, because they can say that this is a unfair trade practice, it's a non-tariff barrier. Nevertheless, the whole situation is regarding beef and dairy in a very gray area, and nothing is known. There's another field in which we are going to face a major problem with US, and that is liquor and beer. At present, liquor and beer are provincially controlled and almost a provincial monopoly in Canada. USA doesn't believe in that, and USA considers it to be unfair to the US manufacturers. They say that the provincial monopoly should be broken down. It should be an open market. And again, if it's an open market, the situation would change perceptibly. And it might not be to the advantage of the Canadian manufacturers. So the whole industry basically relating to liquor, beer, beef, dairy is in a state of flux, and the new trade representative is not a real bosom friend of the wishes of Canada. Now, there was another point raised after the video message of Honorable Prime Minister, and that was that while the Prime Minister is calling for economic integration between the economies of USA and Canada, There is no integration in the economies of the 10 provinces of Canada. The barriers, the provincial barriers, between the trade between diverse provinces are extremely preventive and prohibitive, and they restrict fair trade, free trade. And one member of the transition team remarked that first Canada should set its own house in order, let it ensure a fair, free trade between the different provinces of Canada, and then dream of, now the word is not think of but even dream of, having economic integration with USA. That being the mindset of USA, what should Canada do? Canada has certain inherent strengths. Let's not deny that. And it's incumbent on Canada to utilize those strengths, to develop those strengths. I agree with the criticism that some US has about Canadian. Why should there be tariff and non-tariff barriers in trade, say in Quebec and Ontario, or in New Brunswick and Quebec, or between British Columbia? Why is it not possible for oil to come from Alberta easily to Ontario and Quebec? Why are there barriers? Not only in the products, but even in services. Why cannot an architect or a chartered accountant registered in Ontario go and practice in Quebec? So the whole thing has to be rethought of. Let's ensure and put our house in order first. Once we have our house in order, there will be economies that will emerge out of that integration within the country. Those economies will strengthen the various sectors and make it easy to compete in the world economy, as well as to demand, if you want at all, an economic integration with USA. When you're playing on a level playing field, then integration is on equal terms. When the field is not level and you are playing with your hands tied behind your back, then you get unfavorable terms, and that's not in the interest of the country. So, the whole thing has to be rethought of. Rushing in, making statements is not a done thing. The policy should have been to wait and watch, and while waiting and watching, develop our inherent resources as to show to US that, look here, Canada might need you, but you need Canada more than Canada needs you. We are inherent strength in 3 areas: water, hydro, and other natural resources like oil. Now, with the stopping of drilling, Canadian oil can have a greater market in US. But we haven't done that. We have not tried to stress and harness our own resources. Secondly, some people in the Trump team are really, really pissed off. They think that Prime Minister, by sending a message directly to the Congress, bypass the presidency. He is aware of the president's ideas and yet is trying to appeal to Congress. This, according to them, is undiplomatic and not appropriate. I will not go into the nuances of that. because whatever the Prime Minister has done, he must have done according to his own thought or on the advice of the advisors and the ministers. But normally the head of the government should correspond with the head of the government. Congress is not the head of the government. The head of the government happens to be the president and president-elect, who will become the president on January 20th. This bypassing would definitely leave a bitter taste in the mouth. So diplomatically, it was not proper. From trade point of view, it's not proper, considering that they are addicted to protectionism. I'm using the word addicted to, because all the campaign of President Trump has been to make America great again. He didn't never say make North America great again. So, and then we have to consider one thing which can be of attraction to US, which even President-elect Trump would be happy to embrace. And that is what I talked about last month. North American Infrastructure Bank. That idea was accepted by the finance minister, and that is being developed. Now, if we increase the ambit of that Canada Infrastructure Bank and make it North America Infrastructure Bank, which will assist in infrastructure projects on both sides of the border, that would be lapped up by the new presidency. And once you have a favorable interaction with the White House, once all those pinpricks have been removed, then there's a possibility of having other benefits. But trying to bypass the powerful White House is hitting yourself and is not in the national interest. Let's have our priorities right and try to ensure that the new presidency does not in any way negatively impact our economy. The chances are, the way things are going, that there would be some repercussions. There would be some impact. Our effort should be to lessen and decrease the impact by giving an other way of attracting and engaging our powerful southern neighbor. That needs imagination, initiative, innovation. One idea I've just given, North America Infrastructure Bank, that can be further developed. And such more innovative concepts can be thought of to engage Americans, and then once you engage them, then you can appeal to them that let the status quo not be changed. Let the lumber, beef and dairy not suffer by reactivating the other regulations that are deleterious, harmful to the Canadian interest. It's up to Ottawa to take the measures. It's up to them to read the writing on the wall and ensure that the country doesn't suffer.